I'm Emma Rodriguez, 29 years old, and I never thought my life would take such an incredible turn. As a dedicated software engineer, I always believed in hard work and genuine love. What I didn't expect was for my own mother to orchestrate the ultimate betrayal by convincing my boyfriend to marry my sister instead. But sometimes, life's cruelest moments lead to its greatest blessings. When they all showed up at my housewarming party years later, the shock on their faces when they met my husband was absolutely priceless. Growing up in Denver, our family looked perfect from the outside. My mother, Carmen, was the neighborhood social queen who controlled everything with a velvet-gloved iron fist. My father, Roberto, was her quiet shadow, always nodding along to keep peace. Then there was my sister Isabella, 2 years older, and everything my mother wanted in a daughter: gorgeous, charismatic, and socially gifted. I was the family oddball. While Isabella perfected her makeup and charm, I was coding in my bedroom, surrounded by computer manuals instead of fashion magazines. By 16, I had mastered 4 programming languages and built my first e-commerce website. None of this impressed my mother. "Computers are for boys, Emma," she'd say dismissively. "No man wants a wife who speaks in code." Every achievement of mine was overshadowed by Isabella's latest social triumph. When I won a state programming competition with a full scholarship, my mother's response was, "That's nice, dear, but did you hear Isabella got offered a modeling contract?" My father would occasionally sneak into my room after these exchanges, awkwardly patting my shoulder. "Your mother means well," he'd mumble, but his eyes said otherwise. The summer before my senior year, I made a promise to myself. I would use my scholarship to escape. I applied only to colleges far from home and celebrated privately when MIT accepted me. College became my sanctuary. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who valued intelligence over appearance. I met my best friend Zoe during orientation when we both reached for the same computer science textbook. "You can have it," she said with a grin. "I'll just copy your notes when you inevitably understand everything better than me." Through Zoe, I began building confidence my family had systematically destroyed. She couldn't understand why I dreaded going home. "Your family sounds toxic," she said after hearing about my mother's favoritism. "You know that's not normal, right?" I knew intellectually, but emotionally I still craved their approval. Each visit home confirmed nothing had changed. If anything, my growing independence seemed to irritate my mother more. During my junior year, I met David Chun at a tech conference. He was presenting his startup's innovative app connecting freelance developers with small businesses. His presentation was brilliant but humble, and when I approached him afterward with suggestions for his user interface, he actually listened. "Your perspective is exactly what this project needs," he said over coffee. "Would you be interested in collaborating?" That collaboration became weekly meetings, which evolved into actual dates. David was unlike anyone I'd ever met, brilliant but humble, ambitious but ethical. He saw and valued exactly what my family dismissed about me. Our relationship deepened over months. He shared his dreams of building meaningful technology, and I found myself opening up about my complicated family dynamics. "They sound challenging," he said carefully after I described a particularly painful Christmas. "Your intelligence and passion are incredible gifts, Emma. Anyone who can't see that isn't really seeing you." By spring break of my senior year, we were serious enough that I invited him home to meet my family. Part of me wanted to show off this amazing man who valued what my family dismissed. Another part hoped seeing me with someone like David might finally earn my mother's respect. The visit started well. My father seemed genuinely interested in David's business, asking thoughtful questions about his growth strategy. My mother was uncharacteristically warm, serving her special paella usually reserved for Isabella's boyfriends. "You've accomplished so much at such a young age," my mother told David, refilling his wine glass.
Mit Graduate, successful entrepreneur.
Very impressive. I should have recognized the calculating gleam in her eyes. Isabella arrived halfway through dinner, claiming to be in the neighborhood, despite living 40 minutes away. She swept in wearing a form-fitting dress, hair and makeup perfect. "So you're the genius programmer Emma's been hiding," she said with a laugh that somehow made my relationship sound secretive rather than simply private. Throughout dinner, Isabella inserted herself into every conversation, strategically highlighting connections with David. They both enjoyed hiking, though Isabella had gone exactly twice for Instagram photos. They both loved sushi, though Isabella usually complained about raw fish. I watched David carefully, relieved to see him responding politely, but returning his attention to me after each interruption. When Isabella asked about his business model, claiming interest in entrepreneurship, David gave brief answers before turning to me. "Emma's actually been helping me optimize the algorithm," he said, squeezing my hand. "She spotted inefficiencies I completely missed." Despite these undercurrents, the weekend ended positively. David seemed impressed with my family, though he noted how quiet my father became around my mother. Over the following weeks, our relationship deepened further. Late one night, lying under the stars on his apartment rooftop, David brought up our future. "Have you thought about after graduation?" he asked, fingers intertwined with mine. "Job hunting, I guess," I replied. "What if you join my company instead? We could build something amazing together." He squeezed my hand, and maybe we could find an apartment together too. My heart raced. For the first time, I envisioned a future where I was truly happy. "Yes," I whispered, overwhelmed with emotion. Little did I know that while I was dreaming of our future, forces were already working to destroy it. My final semester should have been exciting, but subtle changes began affecting my relationship with David. His responses to texts became slower. Our daily calls became sporadic. He canceled our Friday dates 3 weeks running, citing investor meetings. "I'm sorry, babe," he'd say apologetically. "This funding round is crucial. Once it's secured, things will calm down." One evening, scrolling through Instagram, I noticed a post from a restaurant in my hometown featuring their signature dessert. In the background, blurred but recognizable, was David's profile. My stomach dropped. He told me he was in San Francisco that weekend. When I confronted him, his explanation came too quickly. Last-minute change. "A potential investor lives near your parents and suggested meeting there." "Did you see my family?" A pause. "Too long. I ran into your mom at the store. She insisted I come over for coffee." Something felt off, but I told myself I was being paranoid. I threw myself deeper into my capstone project, ignoring the growing unease. 3 weeks later, instead of going home for spring break, I decided to surprise David by driving to his apartment. When I arrived, his car wasn't there. On a hunch, I drove to his office. His business partner Ryan was just leaving. Ryan looked confused. He took a few days off. Said he was visiting family. David's family lived in California. Mine lived in Colorado. We were in Massachusetts. I drove home in a daze, not entirely sure what I was thinking. 6 hours later, I pulled into my parents' driveway at midnight. My father's car was there, my mother's, and parked behind them was David's distinctive silver Honda. The house was dark except for the living room. I used my key to enter quietly, hearing low voices. Moving toward the sound, my heart pounding, I stopped at the living room entrance, partially hidden by the hallway wall. David sat on our couch, Isabella beside him closer than friends would sit. My mother was in her favorite chair, leaning forward as she spoke. "You two make perfect sense together," she was saying. "Emma is so absorbed in her computer world. She'll never appreciate what you're building, David. You need someone who understands the social aspects of business. Isabella has those skills naturally." "Emma's been really distant lately," David replied, shifting uncomfortably. "Always working on her project." "That's how she is," Isabella chimed in, placing her hand on his knee. "Always choosing computers over people. Remember when she missed my graduation for some tech conference? I hadn't missed it by choice. Isabella had specifically told me not to come after I refused to write her final paper." "I just don't know anymore," David continued. "Things were clear a few months ago, but now." "You need to think about your future," my mother pressed. "Isabella would be the perfect partner for a man with your ambitions. She can make the right connections, host the right events. Can you honestly see Emma doing that?" I must have made a sound because suddenly all three heads turned. The look on David's face, shock mixed with guilt, told me everything. Emma, my mother recovered first. What a surprise. We thought you were staying at school. I ignored her, focusing on David. How long has this been going on? He stood, moving away from Isabella. It's not what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like you've been visiting my family behind my back, sitting here discussing our relationship and your doubts about me. Sweetheart, my mother interjected, we're just having a conversation. David has been kind enough to visit occasionally. When did these visits start? I asked David directly. He couldn't meet my eyes. A couple months ago. Your mom called, said your dad was feeling lonely. It seemed harmless. My father had no such issues. He was upstairs, either oblivious or deliberately absent. And then, I pressed. Then it became regular, David admitted. Your mom would call when you were busy with school. So while I told you I was working on my future, you were here questioning that future with my mother and sister? Emma, my mother stood, approaching carefully. You're overreacting. David has been confused about your relationship. I simply pointed out that perhaps you two want different things. And suggested my sister as a convenient replacement? Don't be crude, my mother snapped. I merely observed that Isabella might be better suited to the life David is building. I turned to David. Do you agree? Am I too focused on my career to be a good partner? His hesitation was my answer. Emma, he finally said, you have to admit things have changed. You're always working. It's temporary, I interrupted. And you've been equally busy. I never doubted your commitment because of it. Your family helped me see that maybe we want different futures, he continued. I laughed hollowly. Mom, why? Why would you do this? For a moment, my mother's mask slipped completely. Let's be practical, Emma. Isabella needs a successful husband more than you do. You'll always support yourself with your computer skills. Isabella needs security. The brutal honesty stunned me. Where's Dad in all this? Your father doesn't involve himself in these matters, my mother said tightly. I looked at David one last time. We're done. Don't contact me again. As I walked out, I heard my mother saying, she'll calm down eventually. Emma has always been dramatic. I got in my car and drove until I couldn't see through tears anymore. Pulling over at a rest stop, I called Zoe. I need help, I sobbed. Everything's falling apart. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I couldn't eat, sleep, or focus on completing my degree. With just 2 months remaining, I made the painful decision to withdraw from MIT. Zoe offered her couch until I figured out next steps. Her tiny apartment became my refuge as I cycled through grief, rage, and self-doubt. Your mother is genuinely toxic, Zoe declared one evening over ice cream. And I once knew someone who stole identities for a living. After a week of barely leaving the couch, Zoe gently suggested therapy. Dr. Martinez was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and direct manner. What your family did was profound betrayal, she told me in our first session. Your feelings are valid, but you have choices about what role they play in your future. Those weekly sessions became anchors. Dr. Martinez helped me see patterns in my family dynamics and understand that I didn't have to continue participating in them. By August, I had decided to complete my degree at University of Washington in Seattle. With my MIT transcript and recommendations, I was accepted with a scholarship covering my final semester. Saying goodbye to Zoe was difficult, but Seattle felt like breathing fresh air after drowning. I found a small apartment near campus and decorated it with nothing that reminded me of my past. My phone remained largely silent. David tried calling and texting for weeks, his messages evolving from defensive to apologetic to pathetically nostalgic. I never responded, eventually blocking his number. My parents' communications followed predictable patterns. My mother acted as if nothing happened, sending chatty texts about neighborhood gossip. My father sent occasional brief messages. Neither acknowledged the betrayal directly. Through social media, which I rarely checked, I learned David and Isabella were officially dating. 2 months later, they were engaged. I deactivated all accounts that day. With social media gone and old connections fading, I poured everything into rebuilding my life. I completed my degree with honors and accepted a position at a promising tech company in downtown Seattle. Slowly, I built new friendships. There was Maya from the climbing gym, who dragged me on weekend hikes. Josh and Alex, a couple from my building, adopted me into their friend group. And there was Sam from work, whose quiet competence and dry humor made our coding sessions enjoyable. These friends knew nothing of my family drama. They accepted my reluctance to discuss home without question, filling our time with present joys rather than past sorrows. 1 year after moving to Seattle, I received a text from my father that finally acknowledged reality. Isabella and David's wedding this weekend. Your mother asks if you've changed your mind about attending. I hadn't been invited. I responded simply, no. My father's reply came hours later. I understand.
I'm sorry, Emma.
Through minimal contact with my father, I learned David's startup had failed 6 months after their wedding. He was now working for a competitor, a significant step down. Isabella was between jobs again. They'd moved into my parents' guest house temporarily. This information should have brought satisfaction. Instead, I felt empty. Their struggles didn't undo my pain or restore what I'd lost. Around this time, I was assigned to a new project developing cybersecurity software for financial institutions. The project lead was Marcus Thompson, a brilliant developer with 10 years of experience who'd recently transferred from our New York office. Under his mentorship, my skills expanded exponentially. You have remarkable talent, he told me during a code review, but you're playing it safe. Don't be afraid to propose unconventional solutions. His encouragement pushed me to develop innovative algorithms that significantly improved our system's efficiency. When the project completed ahead of schedule and under budget, Marcus ensured the entire department knew my contributions had been crucial. That project led to my first promotion, then larger responsibilities. By my 3rd year in Seattle, I'd established a reputation as someone who solved impossible problems. Yet despite professional success and supportive friendships, I kept romantic partners at arm's length. The betrayal had left scars that made trusting difficult. Dr. Martinez, with whom I still had occasional video sessions, gently pointed this out. Walls keep out pain, she said, but they also keep out joy. The Nexus project was our company's most ambitious undertaking, a comprehensive platform integrating multiple financial systems while maintaining strict security protocols. As lead developer, I attended the kickoff meeting with excitement and trepidation. Before we begin, our department had announced, I'd like to introduce Ryan Park, joining us from our Vancouver office. Ryan will be technical architect for Nexus. Ryan entered the conference room, and my first impression was of quiet confidence. Around my age, with thoughtful eyes behind simple glasses and a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. When he spoke, explaining his vision for the project architecture, his passion was evident in every carefully chosen word. During breakout sessions, Ryan and I were assigned to design the security framework. As we worked, I found myself impressed by his problem-solving approach, methodical yet creative, with an eye for elegant solutions. Interesting way to handle the encryption sequence, I commented as he sketched a diagram. He smiled slightly. Sometimes the best solutions come from questioning what we assume belongs together. Over following weeks, Ryan and I developed a productive professional rhythm. We challenged each other's ideas respectfully, building on different strengths to create something better than either could design alone. One evening, as we were the last people in the office, Ryan suggested, "Want to continue this discussion over dinner? There's a great Thai place nearby." The invitation was casual, clearly professional, yet I hesitated. This boundary between colleague and potential friend was one I rarely crossed. "No pressure," he added. "Just thought food might help us solve this authentication puzzle." I surprised myself by agreeing. That dinner became the first of many. Our conversations expanded beyond work to books, hiking trails, travel stories. Ryan spoke warmly of his family, Korean immigrants who'd built a successful accounting practice in Vancouver, his younger brother's engineering studies, family dinners filled with laughter and gentle teasing. His stories were so different from the dynamics I'd grown up with that they felt almost fictional. 3 months into the project, Ryan suggested a Saturday hike to celebrate completing a challenging module. The trail offered spectacular views of Mount Rainier, and as we reached the summit, something shifted between us. Away from keyboards and conference rooms, surrounded by towering trees and mountain vistas, we were simply two people enjoying each other's company. During our descent, Ryan mentioned a film festival happening the following weekend. Would you be interested in going? Not as colleagues, he clarified, but as a date. The word triggered immediate panic. I'd successfully avoided anything beyond casual encounters since moving to Seattle. I need to think about it, I replied honestly. Take all the time you need, Ryan said simply. That evening I called Zoe for the first time in weeks. He asked you out, and you said you'd think about it, she exclaimed. Emma, this is progress. 6 months ago you would have invented an emergency to avoid answering. But what if it goes wrong? What if it goes right? She countered. Look, I get it. David and your family did serious damage. But from everything you've told me, Ryan seems genuinely decent. After wrestling with fears for another day, I texted Ryan to accept. Our first official date revealed new layers that deepened my attraction. His intelligence I already knew, but his playful humor emerged outside work. He asked thoughtful questions and remembered small details from previous conversations. Most importantly, he seemed completely comfortable with himself. As weeks became months, our relationship deepened. Ryan's patience allowed me to set the pace, never rushing intimacy or demanding emotional declarations. When I finally told him I was falling in love 8 months after our first date, his response was both joyful and reassuring. I've been in love with you since our second project meeting, he admitted. When you completely redesigned my security protocol and made it brilliant, I knew you were someone extraordinary. Still, I kept my deepest wounds hidden. Ryan knew I was estranged from my family, but not why. That changed when he invited me to Vancouver for Lunar New Year celebrations. The Park family welcomed me with genuine warmth. Watching their interactions, the affectionate teasing, disagreements resolved with laughter, unquestioned support, brought both joy and painful comparison. After we returned to Seattle, Ryan found me crying in our hotel room. What's wrong? He asked, immediately concerned. Did my family overwhelm you? No, your family is wonderful, I managed through tears. They showed me what I never had. That night, I shared everything. MIT, David, my mother's manipulation, Isabella's betrayal, my father's complicity, the shattered life I'd fled. Ryan listened without interruption, his expression shifting from shock to anger to deep compassion. Thank you for trusting me with this, he said finally, taking my hands. I understand now why trust is difficult for you. He paused carefully. What they did was unforgivable, but not everyone will betray you. I won't betray you. You can't promise that, I whispered. I can promise to try every day to be worthy of your trust, he replied. And I promise that if we ever have conflicts, I'll bring them directly to you. His response acknowledged the reality of my experience, while offering a different path forward. That honesty meant more than blanket reassurances could have. On their final evening, as Ryan and my father discussed baseball and Isabella helped with dishes, my mother found me alone on the deck. You've done well for yourself, she said, an admission that clearly cost her. Thank you, I replied. I still believe I did what was necessary, she continued. But I recognize my methods were perhaps controlling. Coming from my mother, this was the closest to an apology I'd receive. I won't pretend what you did didn't hurt deeply, I said. But I've built a good life. She nodded, looking at the water rather than me. Your father wants family counseling. Would you consider joining occasionally? The request, halting and uncomfortable, revealed vulnerability I'd never seen. I'll think about it, I promised. The most surprising conversation came from David, who asked to speak privately before departure. I wanted to thank you, he began. For what? For not hating me. You would be justified. He hesitated. Seeing you with Ryan, the respect between you, made me realize what I gave up. I'm not saying this to disrupt your life. I just want you to know I recognize what I lost. His regret seemed genuine. What will you do now? Start over. Isabella and I have been pretending for years. Neither of us is happy. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, meaning it. Don't be. It's time for better choices. He stood to leave, then paused. You deserved better, Emma. I'm glad you found it. After they left, our house felt emptier but lighter. The confrontation had been painful but necessary, clearing festering wounds and replacing them with understanding. In months that followed, we established new connection patterns. My father and I spoke weekly as his condition deteriorated. I flew to Denver twice to spend time with him. When he passed away 8 months later, I stood beside my mother and sister at his funeral, united in grief, if not full reconciliation. After my father's death, Isabella surprised everyone by following through on change promises. She filed for divorce, moved into her own apartment, and found work as an administrative assistant. The position was modest but represented independence she'd never known. My mother remained my mother, critical, controlling, resistant to change. But our confrontation had shifted the power dynamic permanently. I engaged on my terms or not at all. With my family in their appropriate place rather than dominating my life, Ryan and I focused on our future. Our company continued thriving, expanding internationally. 2 years after the family confrontation, we welcomed our daughter Sophie, followed 18 months later by our son Daniel. Becoming parents cast my family history into sharper relief. Holding my children, I made silent promises never to play favorites, to see and celebrate them for exactly who they were. The ultimate victory wasn't financial success or professional recognition, though those were gratifying. It wasn't even our beautiful family, precious as they were. The victory was internal, knowing I'd rebuilt myself from broken pieces into someone stronger and wiser. On Sophie's second birthday, as our home filled with friends and laughter, I caught my reflection in a window. The woman looking back bore little resemblance to the devastated girl who'd once fled her family's betrayal. This woman stood confident, surrounded by love she'd chosen. The journey from betrayal to peace wasn't linear or simple. It required confronting painful truths, setting boundaries, and believing I deserved better. Perhaps that's the most valuable lesson. Our capacity for happiness expands when we truly believe we're worthy of it. If you're facing betrayal or heartbreak, remember this. The people who hurt you don't get to decide your worth. They don't get to write your story's ending. That power belongs to you alone. Sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as cruelest blows, redirecting us toward paths we might never have chosen, but that lead somewhere far better than we imagined.